And Joseph, thanks for taking the time. I mean, when we look at this, it's interesting because we've had a few guests highlight that you can't really just listen to that headline number. You got to dig a little bit deeper. And I just raised the point with Heidi here that a lot of those jobs were coming back in the leisure and hospitality space, 2.1 million jobs there for that sector, accounting for about 2/5 of the total jobs we saw in the month. But looking beyond some of those temporarily laid off workers here, you dig in a little bit deeper than that, and our guest from Indeed pointed out core employment, which removes temporary workers and the marginally attached, actually increased in June over May. So what do you make of maybe this not being a terribly strong jobs number?
It's certainly a mishmash. There are a lot of different things going on. The phrase "the fog of war" comes to mind. I've never in my career, which is much longer than you would even care to think about, had to worry so much about in which week the survey was taken. It turns out that the June survey was in the second week of June. Since that time, as you know, we've had big jumps in cases of coronavirus in many parts of the country. You noted earlier, and Heidi mentioned earlier, and it's an important point, that a lot of the jobs that were gained in June were gotten back in the fields of hospitality and in retail. You can only get those jobs back once. You can lose them again. And to the extent that states now are beginning to get their first waves of the coronavirus pandemic, basically the entire country other than the Northeast, if those states decide that they have to clamp down on the reopening that they've been doing, we're going to see some reversals in what we've enjoyed so far. You look at the results of the survey, and there is a decline in the number of people who report that they are on temporary layoff. There is an increase in the number of people who say that they have permanently lost their jobs. And so we're having these developments in the business sector where some businesses apparently were trying to hang on and now have decided that they can't make a go of it anymore. I'm glad that the employment number is up. That's great. I'd love to see it continuing. But there is not necessarily a momentum here that we will see carrying forward into the future. Yeah. And we could see those numbers flattening off even more.
Well, that's kind of what I guess if you pair the two reports, that's kind of what you would piece together here. But when we look at what that could mean for stimulus hopes here, Fox Business reporting, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin had already indicated that the next round of stimulus might be delayed beyond July because we got this jobs report. A lot of investors might be in this weird twilight zone where good news becomes bad news because you don't see stimulus rushed out here. But what do you make of that, and potentially how it could, maybe even further down the line, be a big problem if you don't help workers that are caught here maybe in the middle?
Well, what we have to lose at the end of the current month is that bump up in unemployment insurance benefits, which is of particular importance to low-paid people in states that do not have generous unemployment compensation programs. Those people will be badly hurt, but everybody would lose that bump up in benefits. And given the unemployment numbers at this time, the hit that would impose on the economy is serious. We are talking about people being able to feed their families, being able to pay their rent. We're talking about really the basics of life here for a large number of people who stand to have a lot to lose. It's very easy to look at an optimistic employment situation report. And again, thank God that we do have the numbers moving in the right direction. But again, as Heidi emphasized, and you've pointed out as well, you're seeing a movement in the right direction from very much at the wrong end of the spectrum. And so we still have a long, long way to go to get back. And if that help for the economy is withdrawn, allowed to expire at the end of this month, that could be very troublesome.
Yeah, and real quick, lastly, before we let you go, obviously we've been trying to track where the unemployment rate might be. I don't know how many people expected to be back at 11% here in the beginning of July, but what might that mean for your projections in year end? As we've heard, some might say we could still be higher than what we saw at the peak of the great financial recession.
We are probably going to, most forecasts have double-digit unemployment going through pretty much the end of this year. And I think there's a very good likelihood that that, in fact, will transpire. We're not going to see the kind of improvement numerically that we saw this month continuing into the future.
Hey investors, Zack Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.